Thank you.
Hey everyone, my guest today is Peter Gallagher. Peter has delivered critically acclaimed performances on film, television, and stage. Some of his film credits include Sex, Lies, and Videotape, American Beauty, The Player, Shortcuts, The Idolmaker, Dream Child, While You Were Sleeping, and so many more. On TV, you've seen him on Grace and Frankie, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Grey's Anatomy, Law and Order, New Girl, Law and Order, SVU. New Girl, Covert Affairs, Togetherness, Californication, Rescue Me, and, of course, guys, the OC. On Broadway, he has starred in Guys and Dolls, Long Day's Journey into Night, The Real Thing, The Corn is Green, A Doll's Life, Noise is Off, The Country Girl, Grease, Hair on the 20th Century, and now, my loves, he is currently performing again on Broadway in Left on 10th with his glorious co-star, Juliana Margulies. Peter Gallagher, welcome to the podcast.
Oh,
Hello.
hello, Alana. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Oh my God. Well, we were
Exhausted after
talking,
that list of credits. I'm glad I didn't do it all last week.
you'd be exhausted. I know. And as you know, anyone Googling this man, this is just like a thumbnail sketch of the things. Um, First of all, congrats on a glorious career.
Oh,
Mazel tov.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's miraculous, and I'm so grateful and surprised and delighted that I'm still doing it. I mean, it's everything. It feels like I started 10 minutes ago. So it's,
Yeah, time is a crazy, crazy thing. I know because I have a brother-in-law who was in the Beelzebubs that you were also a part of that singing group. I think you might have crossed paths at some point. Um, but so obviously singing has been a part of your life for a long time, but probably even before you got to Tufts. So can we go back before we get to this beautiful play by Delia Ephron, Left on 10th, which gutted me and made me laugh in equal parts.
yay.
Yes, and you're so fantastic in it. The two of you together, your whole cast are so insanely talented. It's ridiculous. But let's go back a little bit because in all of like the deep dive about you that I did recently, it doesn't feel like you grew up in like a house that was really talking about theater a lot. So that might be the understatement of the century. Um, how did you fall in love with performing? When did you know you could sing like that and do what you do? What was like the beginning?
Um, Well, it's, like much of my experience in life was just began with suspicion. Very little anything definite or confirmed um, and it really started with the Dean Martin show. And we had a TV, a very old TV that was very intermittent in what it could receive or what you could see. I'd watch Dennis the Menace in like triplicate, and up right up by the screen. But one thing it always got was the Lawrence Welk show.
Thank God.
Parents loved.
Hmm.
I would sit there and watch it, and I think it was after the Lawrence Welk show or something like that. I don't remember when it was on. It was a Dean Martin show, and I watched Dean Martin. I thought, oh my gosh, there is a world out there where people are happy and have
Mm,
a good time. And there was just something about him that I just loved. And so as a little boy, I would do Dean Martin impressions for not, I mean, for myself pretty much. I mean, not always in front of other, but occasionally. And I was this odd little kid. That's Gallagher. He's doing Dean Martin again. Everybody loves somebody's. But I had no confirmation that it was worth listening to. It just gave me, happiness. And the first time I sang in public was in the music teacher, Mr. Bissell's music room. And I was the only person not asked to be in the musical. But because I guess maybe I was asking for attention and all, or maybe I was found, I don't know. But I remember we were learning a song and I must have been misbehaving or something. I don't know. And he said, Peter, get up and sing that in front of the class by yourself. And if I could have run into traffic and ended it all right there, I would have.
Mm.
because I was mortified. I was a shy kid, and I was mortified and terrified. And I remember standing up and wishing my life would end. And um, but then just something inside me kicked in. And I say, I'll be goddamned if you're going to bring me down and try to embarrass me and hurt me in front of these people. I says, I'm going to sing this fucking song the best way I can. And I had never sung in public before. I'd never sung. Music. We didn't have a record player growing up. We it was my mother was a scientist. My dad was, had come back from the war, worked on billboards and advertised. His dad was a coal miner. We were trying. They were basically immigrants. My mom was first generation, trying to figure out how to raise three kids and make it in the world. And entertainment, theater, no, we're talking about life and death. They were from the
Right.
depression. My dad had come back from the battle in the Bulge and the Normandy invasion and didn't talk. And so uh, I just remember that moment where I thought, I'm not going to let you, I'm not going to, I'm not going to fall. I'm not going to crumble here. And I just reached down and sang the song. I can't even remember what the song was, but I found something in the music that supported me, and uh, and I sang it. And at the end, the world didn't burst into flames, and I didn't, collapse and die. And I think I must have really pissed off Mr. Bissell because it was probably better than because the next thing I knew, he sent me to the back of the room, um, uh, where there was a string bass, which I couldn't keep my hands off. So then he sent me out of the room. But he ended up being an incredibly important person in my life because he's the one who introduced me to the theater. And then after many hours of pacing up and down the hall with some assistance from my French teacher, when he was casting the next show after the one, I was the only one that wasn't in it, 110.
Right.
Um, this French teacher encouraged me to go and I didn't sing for that show either, but there was another thing I suspected I could do an English accent. Again, I'd never done it in front of any living human, but I'd seen, some old movies and things like that. And I got that part as Mortimer in the Fantastics. And so that was the eye opener of eye openers, that there was this place in the world. And for some weird reason, I felt like I fit in. And you could talk to girls because they were doing the same thing and you had a context. I could not open my mouth. I could not talk
Wow.
to girls.
Right.
Or, I couldn't, I had no social confidence in that way. So in that construct, in that paradigm, in the theater, um, and I knew what the outcome was. I wasn't worried about, who knows what's going to happen at the end of the show tonight. Everybody might get machine gunned to death, or or fall over, or be fired, or you knew how it was going to end, and it was just about process, about getting there.
Where was this? Where was Mr. Bissell? Where was the school? Where
This
did
was
you
in
grow
Armonk.
up?
My first home was in Yonkers on Bronx River Road. And we lived in the Bronx and moved around a little bit. Housing was tight immediately post-war, which was
Right.
I was not born immediately post-war, about 10 years later, but no, moving around. We ended up living in with my grandparents' building on Yonkers in Yonkers. And then when I was pretty young, we moved up to Armonk, New York, which for my mother was like moving to British Columbia. I mean, I don't think she left the house. But she also had some social phobias and issues and things. But to Byram Hills High School, this wonderful, wonderful high school, because IBM had just moved to Armonk. And so all of a sudden the tax revenues went through the roof, and we had the greatest teachers, and we had a new school. And my older brother, I was the mistake in the family, which Mr. Bissell made me aware of also at a young age. And and my older brother and sister there was no school because they ended up going to private. All our money and resources went into educating my brother and
Huh.
sister. And but this wonderful, wonderful, I'm still in touch with my pals from high school, and it was Mr. Bissell really who had worked in New York and played, in fact, played for Lily Tomlin in New Faces of 1952, and had a very you know passionate and informed view of how things should be. And I learned so much from him, so much.
So after that inciting, humiliating incident, and I love you, I mean, you remember that feeling like it happened yesterday. We never forget those
Yeah.
really like awful seminal moments in our early childhood that sort of
Mm.
set the stage for everything that comes after. It sounds like you and Mr. Bissell came to an understanding at some point. Did he ever see you perform professionally?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And I brought him to the premiere of my first movie. Um, and he came to see me in Greece and hair,
Okay.
and was very proud. But it was all the way. I was never one he thought was going to go anywhere.
Hmm.
And and he also was very reluctant to encourage anybody because he'd seen so much heartbreak and disappointment
Right.
himself and his friends
He'd
and
lived it.
who ever really made it. So,
Right, right. And so when you went to college, were you already interested in, I mean, we talked about the Beelzebubs. Shout out to my brother-in-law, Michael Miller. Um,
oh, Michael Miller. Oh, wait,
yeah,
the doctor,
yeah,
Michael, get out of town. That's crazy. Yes, I know Michael. I mean,
yep,
I think it's the same. He stayed in Boston, right? And
yeah,
oh my goodness.
yeah. He's the
Oh,
best. He's
yeah,
the best.
that's
So I have listened to so many Beelzebub's recordings and I know so much about it. Um, and it was a very, especially when you were there, like that was sort of a prime Beelzebub moment, the years that you guys were there. But I want to know, like, is that already the beginning of like seeds planted? I'm going to do this professionally. You talked about suspicion. I was suspicious about things. When you went to Tufts, what did you think you were going to do when you got out of Tufts?
I didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
I I really did. I didn't have a clue, and I didn't really know why I was going to Tufts. It's so education was so important, but honestly, by the time I came around, my parents were old to begin with. And by the time I was 10 years younger than my brother, 9 years younger than my brother, 6 years than my, they were exhausted. So all this energy went into getting them, my brother and sister, educated, and I'd go to their graduations. When I came along, it was like the college tour. I said, Dad, can I borrow the keys to the car? Where you going, McGee? He never called me by my name. I said, I think I should go see some colleges and stuff like that. Oh, all right. And so he gave me the keys to the car. And I drove through New England by myself.
Oh my God.
And a college tour for me was like driving down the main drag, making a left, making a right. Yeah, that looks good.
That
And
looks like a college.
and then I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't, but I was
God.
free. I was out, and I didn't. I honestly didn't have any. I never thought in a million years I would become an actor or a singer. That wasn't even on. I never knew. My father carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, and all
Hmm.
he did was work. And we never had fun or went on vacations. And my mother, as I said, I adored her. I would be in a hole in the ground if it wasn't for her. But she suffered from depression and from social phobias and really and she was brilliant. She helped develop penicillin during the Second World War as a bacteriologist. When she was assigned to this little four-person research team because looking out for her brother who was blown up in Anzio. And so I uh, I just kind of went there with a heavy heart. I was just like, what am I doing? I said, my brother got an economic. Well, this is my little known facts. I have an economics degree. It's still in the box. It's never been opened. Thank God for
But
everybody.
it's always there to fall back on, Peter.
No, it's not. I have absolutely no aptitude for it. I didn't even know why I chose it, other than that my brother chose it and he
Right.
seemed smart and you should know something. I knew nothing about money, but I didn't study anything I love. I didn't know understand that you could do something you loved in life.
Mm,
I watched my
right.
dad, and it was really like, you work hard, you're miserable, and then you die, and I was cool with that. Um, but I just didn't have any direction, and it was like the Beelzebubs. Again, that was I had been doing musicals in high school, but again, I never thought I would do them again. And Beelzebubs was a great thing that I fell into where you could have that camaraderie, that team kind of spirit,
And a
and uh,
community.
and community. Yeah, and that's really a huge part of it, is to have your family. It's all about the people you're with. Doesn't matter whether the show's a hit, a flop, or whatever it is. It's about the people you're with. I mean, it's much better when it's a hit. Everything is much better when it. I mean, not always, but usually.
If you could kind of look back, I read this huge list of credits on Broadway and film and television. W- What do you think, what do you think was like, and maybe it's hard to distill it down, my lucky break was if I was going to like ask you to kind of fill in the blank. I mean, there's probably many as you look back, but what do you think was like, I think I have longevity because of this?
I think I have longevity because it was the first long word I learned, and I remember it. I think it was like kindergarten. The teacher wrote in my thing that I had perseverance. I
Huh.
didn't even know what that was, and I asked my mom. She said, "That's very good. It's good to have perseverance." And I think I have perseverance. I don't quit easy because I don't feel like I have options. There was a period of time where I was questioning everything, and I really looked for options. I really looked for I could drive a cab, I could, but I couldn't really think of options. So it's like living without a net. You find a way to uh, persevere. But if there was one moment, well, again, it's where suspicion transitions into belief. And there have been several moments. The first one, it was at an open call. That's how I got my first two jobs, uh, Grease and Hair, the revival of Hair in '77. And they were all from open calls. And I was always, I've told this story before, but I was always number 2000 something. No matter how early I would get to the place, I was new 2000 something. And you'd get to the end of a blocks long line. You wait till 10 a.m. and then you inch forward, blah, blah, blah. And go up the stairs and and I and Vinny Liff was holding auditions for Grease, and you had to sing a '50s song, and I was gonna make it interesting and shtick it up and try to like. And I heard the guy in front of me singing. I thought he was so great, and I said, "No, man, I'm just gonna reach down and try to sing it like I mean it." And I'd never it was my first real being heard by someone, a pro in the
Right.
business. I was terrified. This course, I'm always terrified. You just have to make friends with terror.
Huh.
Um, and uh, and I went in and I sang that song, "Put Your Head on My Shoulders," and Vinny Liff looked up and he said, "That was beautiful," and everything inside me collapsed. I could barely keep from crying. I almost fell over, and Phyllis Grandy was playing the piano, and I thought, I am the luckiest person in the world. I don't have to get this job. He's just given me reason to keep showing up for ever because I'm not crazy. I've often thought the kindest thing, the most powerful thing you can do for someone, you could give them reason to believe they're not crazy. And I thought maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe there's a place for me in this world. And that was huge. And and then and then and then the other time I told the story too was when I was having a reevaluating everything, questioning everything, and ready to tear it all down and rebuild it. And when I was sort of coming back out of a period of growth, a real growth, but still very little confidence, I was supposed to audition for Long Day's Journey into Tonight, and I didn't because I thought, I'm no good. There's nothing I could
Mm.
contribute to this. This is the play that the two shows I always wanted to do in my life were Long Day's Journey and Sky and Guys and Dolls. And here it was an opportunity to try to play Edmund, and I didn't go. And Manny Eisenberg, whom I will love forever, I always have loved him. He called me up and he said, "Hey Peter, it's Manny. I'm Jewish. but half of me is Italian. And if you don't go in and audition for this play, I'm going to break both your fucking legs. And I said, thank you, Manny. Thank you. And of course, the irony of like thanking somebody for breaking their legs, but he cared about me. Which is not something that I was really accustomed to.
Right.
And
Wow. Wait, I
he
just wanted for people who don't know who Manny is, because I did a Neil Simon play that Manny produced, and Manny Isenberg is truly one of the great mensches of the
he's a man.
world, an extraordinary producer. He was Neil's longtime producer, but did many things. Um, and the idea that he would adopt people like you were a son to him, and that's so beautiful. I just wanted people to know who we were talking about because he's a rare human being um, who really loves what he does and loves the artists that he gets to work with. And so that, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted
No,
to
that's
let,
absolutely true. He is just a gem, and he's still around. You know,
yeah,
uh, and so he saved me in a way that day. I mean, I don't know what would have happened. I wasn't going to go in again because but the fact that I was willing to, shoot myself in the foot, but I wasn't willing to let Manny down.
right, right. And then you played Sky Masterson. Like the
Yes.
idea that there were these great roles and I that's indelible for me. I like skipped going to temple on a high holiday because someone offered me tickets to see Guys and Dolls, and I was like, this is my sin. It's okay. God will understand that I am watching this show with you guys. I've heard you say that it sort of wasn't exactly what you thought it would be in terms of the experience that you had fantasized about. But I will only say that as an audience member, I had no idea that there was anything except four leads and everyone else in that show channeling the greatest production of that show that ever could have happened. And you were funny and handsome and charming and everything Sky Masterson should be. Your voice was like dreamy, absolutely dreamy in that role. And thank you for that performance. It was life-changing for me.
Oh, thanks to Frank Lester and Abe Burrows for writing that show.
Can we talk about Sex Lies and Videotape, which was the hugest thing to happen in the world of independent film and introduced us to Soderbergh and all of you, James Spader, Andy McDowell, Laura San Giacomo, like that was seminal for a lot of people in terms of what movie making could be. Um, was that a good experience for you doing it?
That was amazing.
It was.
That was amazing. It was great.
Can you
Great. It was
share
great. It was
like what do you remember? And of course we have to get to Left on 10th because that is why you are here. But tell me a little bit about what you remember about that shoot and that experience.
Well, the first thing is that was sent I was in LA in a hotel with my wife. She was working, producing something and a commercial, I think. And I was just tagging along and I get, hey, listen, um, they want to offer you this movie, Sex Lies and Videotape. I'll sending you the script, and the director will like to meet you if you like it. So I was all right. And so I read this script, you know, at night, and I thought it was just amazing. And then fell asleep, went to bed, got up in the middle of the night, said, hey, how could it be that amazing? Was it really that amazing? And so I got up and I didn't want to wake my wife up, so I locked myself in the bathroom and read it again, and it was still amazing. My role was needed work, but I could see what you could do and where you could go with it. And my only question to myself was, what happens if this guy thinks it's like really a autobiography? What happens if he's clinging to this notion of what it is, and I wonder how he sees it? This will be interesting. So I met Steve, and he had this huge afro, and really we had just hit it off. I said, "So, Steve, how do you see this movie?" He said, "Well, I kind of see it as like as a black comedy." He said, "I'm in." And he said, "Listen, I didn't really develop your role very well." I said, "That's okay. Do you like to collaborate?" I said, "I love it." No problem. We'll figure it out. And I'm in. And um, and then we we met down in Louisiana in rehearsal, a really productive, wonderful rehearsal time where there were no producers because the budget was so small and it was split up among a couple of groups that nobody was really, there was nothing that huge at stake and nothing was going wrong. So we were just down there on our own rehearsing this show. And and it was delightful. It reminded me of the first time I worked with Mike Nichols. It just goes to you working with the best is the easiest thing you will ever do because really what they want to do is tell the story the best way they possibly can. And they don't care who comes up with the idea or what it is. It's all about, as we say in the play, process.
Right.
And so Steve couldn't have been more collaborative, which just excited me. I found, he gave me such freedom in terms of finding things that, weren't necessarily obvious, but I thought were hysterically funny. And and of course, I didn't realize the extent to which I was such a despicable human being. But I wasn't really thinking about. I shouldn't
Well,
be.
we have to love all of the characters we
Yeah,
play. You can't think of it like
right,
that anyway.
right. I remember when the ad for the in the Hollywood Reporter came out. Um, and it had the four of us on the couch, and there were these glowing quotes. Harvey Weinstein picked up the movie, Harvey and Bob and Miramax, and there were these glowing. We were on a couch, and there were glowing quotes about each of the actors in from reviews, except for me. There was nothing. Pauline Kael. I got some knock on wood, great notices, but there was nothing next to my picture. I called Harvey. I said, Harvey, what the fuck? I said, do you think the movie would have been better had I been nicer? Or, in some, do you understand? I mean, we were all contributed to the success of this thing. How could you put this ad out there and not have anything next to me? Oh, yeah, okay, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. And they put out another ad. They did. But
It was an oversight.
yeah, not well,
We don't know.
yeah, it doesn't
We
matter.
don't know, guys.
But because I think there was a concern because people had very powerful reaction. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
I went to buy. I was shooting a picture when our son was just been born. I was buying clothes for him and my first little baby in New Mexico, and the person at the store was so helpful. She was amazing. She could, oh, this side, this, and she said, "Excuse me, I'm checking out. Do I know you?" I said, I don't think so. Did we go to school together or something like that? I don't think I went to Tufts. I don't think. He said, I'm an actor. I said, no, that's not it. I said, and I said, I just did this movie, Sex, Lies, and Music. You bastard. And and I said, well, thank you, I guess. But her response was so powerful and visceral, which I appreciated, because you should have responded that way. But I think people sometimes confuse the the job and the reality. But I wouldn't
Well,
have
when
changed a
you
thing. I wouldn't have changed. And I love working with Jimmy and Andy and
you guys were
Laura.
all you
Yeah,
guys were incredible. I would imagine that the opposite experience was when you have this amazing job come up. And I know from Catherine, your daughter, that you had to move your family to LA for the OC after you had been raising them. But the response to that character, the woman in New Mexico selling you clothes would have not yelled at you in that way, but wished that you were her dad as well. I mean, that show was a gift, I imagine.
oh my goodness. Reading that again, it all starts on the page. I'm reading that script. I said, oh my gosh, this is the best show ever. This is exactly the story we should be telling post 9/11 about
Yeah.
a family that still hangs on to their beliefs and their humor and is not afraid to embrace an outsider. And that's America to me, not the xenophobic kind of, you know, direction that some were urging us to go in. I thought, of course, I might have read too much into it or whatever, but I adored it. I love those kids. I love doing
I
it.
know, but when you talk about lovingly and respectfully the relationship you had with your dad, and then the dad you are on that show, um, those are very different ways of parenting. And how incredible to sort of obviously be that in real life, but get to be a role model for how to be a parent. That's TV shows on network. They're in everyone's living room, and it was like kind of an incredible thing to see that kind of generosity and warmth, and like everyone wanted you to be their dad.
It was just it's a great business because if you stick around long enough, every once in a while, wonderful things can happen. I was on the autograph line for Left on 10th just two days ago, and I, this young couple, I think they were from Scot. I didn't ask. I think it sounded like Glasgow, Scotland. But she was 5 months pregnant, and this was her husband, and she was shaking because she had come from difficult circumstances, and she had no good male role models in her life or father images, and she depended on Sandy Cohen.
Oh my God.
And she was shaking because she said, I have a life that I could never have dreamed of. And I chose this man here because he was the most like Sandy of anybody I knew. And he was loving and supportive. And it just made you feel so grateful to be able to contribute. I mean, that's what we hope. I always say the greatest pleasure one can have is contributing to a story that has a place in the world that you live in.
Mm,
And and uh, and that was certainly true with that. And yes, I loved my dad. I adored my dad. He just didn't have. He had suffered a lot. His mom died in his arms when he was 7. His dad was a coal miner. He went to war, and he didn't have the capacity to really understand how important he was, or how important it
right,
was to express yourself or to have feelings.
right.
And it
And
was
how to relate to you. I mean,
right. There's also an
right.
Irish thing of knocking you down before you. So he always says, Gallagher, you're a big wheel. I said, really? Yeah, with small spokes. Go clean the gutters. So there was I loved him, and I just couldn't reach him. I couldn't
So he
ever.
called you McGee, he called you Gallagher
Fathead, lunkhead.
and Lunkhead, but not Peter.
No.
Well, you're playing Peter now, a character named Peter. And do you know offhand how many Broadway shows you've done? Like many.
I kind of do because I just did a thing for Playbill where they had all these playbills. I think I'm just shy of a dozen,
Okay.
11.
Okay. So
A
something drew you
couple
back.
thousand performances at least,
It's
2,500 maybe.
crazy. 6 decades on Broadway. Bravo.
Crazy.
Bananas. That's bananas. How do you even?
That's
And
weird.
you look exactly the same, which is also annoying to the rest of us, but
That's my mother's.
bless you. Talk about what it was about this play, that you thought, okay, I'm going to devote a lot of hours to learning lines and 8 shows a week. It's a lot. So, can you talk about what spoke to you?
The script. As soon as I read the script, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a great part. And this is a great story to be, excuse me, this is a great part. It's a great story to be telling right now. And telling and serving an audience that I think is sometimes underserved, people my age who can afford to go
Mm,
to the theater, who are often were, trying to catch up to popular culture and see what the latest thing is or whatever. But it's not every day that you see a story that hits you where you live, where it's speaking to you, where you don't need there's all you need is a ticket. You don't need anything else to for admission. And so and it was a chance to work with Susan Stroman, who I suspected was going to be. I suspected we were members of the same tribe because we were about the same generation. Then we had experienced Broadway before AIDS, which was an unbelievable place. And then the world we knew disappeared almost overnight. And within a few years, everybody you knew that brought you up, that believed in you, that occupied the audience, the seats in the audience, that were about writing the next amazing show that was going to break, which going to take us from where who had learned from the guys that created it and were going to take us to a new place, were gone. Um, but she wasn't, and I wasn't, and there's still a few of us around, and that remember how you could work and be respectful and kind and strong and have vision and be, you know, and I was right, and she's magnificent, and the cat and Juliana, and but it was the script, um, and it was a dramatic thing that happened to Delia Ephron, who also happens to be a wonderful writer, and in the hands of Daryl Roth, who's also from that era, an era from before. Um, so it was a real no brainer. I mean, I hadn't 8 shows a week. It doesn't get easier. Um,
How do you learn lines? Do you have, for people listening, do you have a ritual, or do you hire someone to help run them with you, or do you have a process? You have a lot of lines. And it isn't a two-hander, but there's a lot of focus. The play is about, two people who find each other after losing their first spouses and come together and fall deeply in love unexpectedly. And then I don't think it's a spoiler alert because people have been able to read about it. Right when they fall in love, the character based on Julia gets really sick, and then miraculously, because of medicine, science, and her new husband's love and the power of that, she gets well. And there's a kind of happily ever after feeling to this play, but it's harrowing for a time and hilarious. It's all the things. Plus, the set is just extraordinarily beautiful. It's such a New York story within all that. Anyway, I just wanted to give people context who haven't had a chance to see it yet. But it is very wordy because Delia Ephron and her sister Nora loved and understood words better than most. How did you learn the play?
this one, when I'm on my own, like when I did The Country Girl, I had a billion lines too, and I actually had to hire somebody to. I wanted to learn the whole show,
And have someone run them with you.
sort of everybody's part, and
Yeah.
uh, but with this show, it's like anything else. You just got to do it. Stop thinking about it. So I find it's most effective that I I do it. I work on it in chunks, and then I'll go to bed and sleep on it, and then it'll start to coalesce. And I also will break it down in terms of what it is I'm expressing, what it is I'm actually talking about, so that it has a kind of architecture that isn't word specific. Um, but I will get the words specifically, but you know, they'll be they will have be inhabiting a kind of architecture that's sturdy. I think, I hope, and just do it and decide. Say, okay, I want to be off book in a week, or 2 weeks, and start it as early as you can, and do little bits. In other words, I'll read the whole play and not try to memorize it. But I'll look at it again and not try to memorize it, and I'll look at it again, and I'll look at it, and then I'll start to memorize it. Just to give my without the pressure of having to get it done by tomorrow. Take the advantage of time and let it, you know, inhabit me a little bit.
Um, you knew that we ended this with a little known fact. You shared the economics degree that's in a box somewhere. So I'm going to do things a little differently and ask you to end the episode by telling me a story that involves Cagney and curtains.
Well, I've been very lucky because I got to work with really all my heroes. O'Toole, Lemon, and Cagney. As an Irish American and just pretty much off the boat. Uh, uh, I have a passport, Irish passport. Um, the three deities in our home were JFK, the Pope, and James Cagney. And 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 my mother, who had gone to Hunter, which is where all the smart girls went who didn't have money. And Jean Cagney, Jimmy's sister, was also at Hunter. I don't know how. I think maybe my mom passed her in the hall. I don't know if they were actually friends or whatever. I don't know. And my her brother, my uncle Larry, who was kind of a tough guy, and when he was in his when he was a kid, he would work as a janitor's assistant in a bank in Mount Vernon, and Art Carney's dad would bring little Art in to tap dance at the Christmas party. So I got this job to do a movie with Cagney and Carney and Joe Frazier and a bunch of these great actors, Ellen Barkin, and they were rehearsing at the Carlisle, and Jimmy had a big suite there. He was living there. Uh, And so they weren't going to let me in. They didn't believe I was in the play. And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be late if you don't let me upstairs. Now, please." Maybe they didn't have my name. And finally, they let me in. And they opened the door, and there's Cagney sitting at a table, squeezing an exercise ball because he had just had, some issue. And Carney sitting across from him, and Cagney looks and says, "Black Irish, just like my father." And I come in, I introduce myself, and I say hello, and Mr. Cagney, this, and Mr. Carney, my dad, blah, 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 blah. So says all of a sudden I was in like Flynn because my mother knew Gene, and my uncle was remembered Art as, and both Art was, they were both wonderful. So we rehearse. And it's the end of the thing. I'm getting ready to leave. He says, "Gallagher." He says, "Yes, Mr. Cagney. I'd like you to meet my wife, Billy." I said, "Well, I'd love to, Mr. Cagney, but first we got to find her." Okay. Um, and so he said, and he was in a wheelchair. He says, "Gallagher, down the hall, down the hall." And so I'm pushing him down the hall. He says, "Go in the bedroom and see if she's in there. Billy, Billy, we're going to find you. Billy, Gallagher, go in the room." And so I go into their bedroom, and it's like an old people's bedroom. I'm going through all this. "Jim, there's nobody here. There's nobody there. All right, Gallagher, down the hall, down the hall." So go down the hall. We go to them. "I want you to check behind the curtain." I said, "It was the dining room." I said, "Really? Check behind the curtains." I said, "Okay, okay." And I go in there, and there's nobody in there. I look around, there's nobody. I pull back the curtains, and there's his wife, Billy, hiding. And and she might have been carrying a bottle or something. I don't know. She says, "I found you, Billy." "Yes, you did, Jim. I want you to meet my friend, Peter Gallagher. Peter, this is my wife, Billy. Pleased to meet you, Peter. Pleased to meet you, Billy." And Paula, my wife and I had just gotten married, like, you know, 10 minutes ago. And here they had been married for like 60. They'd met in 1922 in a Broadway show called Pitter Patter. They were both in the chorus. And, here they were 63 years later, still chasing each other around the apartment. So I thought that was really inspiring.
And you're still married.
And I'm still,
And
right,
you're
we
still,
still have, we have 20 more years to go to get there.
you're
The
good.
crazy thing is this, is that when we were doing Long Day's Journey and Tonight in production, Lemon, which I didn't realize, Lemon and Cagney, of course, were very tight. We never
Mm.
really discussed it. It was a couple of years earlier. So Lemon comes back from lunch. We all come back from lunch. He said, "Gallagher, listen, I just went to see Cagney." And he said, "You tell Gallagher I said hello." So I did. So there, you rotten kid. Um, and and I said, "Jack, did Jimmy really remember? Did he really?" "Yes, he did, you asshole. Why would I tell you a story? No." And 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 it was just the connection with having just been slightly introduced into this world of remarkable people that I was, lucky enough to come along at a time when they were still working. Maureen Stapleton, right next door to me in Greece, and she was one of my pals. She gave me my Theater World Award, and
Oh my
Richard
God,
Burton left
Peter.
me a Welsh flag and a telegram for the Corners Green, and just the generosity and the belief and the feeling of we're all members of the effing lucky club.
Yeah.
We don't really think because I've got all these awards or this or that I'm better than you. We're just smart enough to know how lucky we are, and we'd be crazy not to be enjoying ourselves.
Oh, Peter, that's so incredible. And I mean, just the full circle of it, like the idea, Cagney and the Pope, and JFK and just the full circle of those things. And you couldn't even imagine it, right? You couldn't even
No,
suspect it in the world of like what you could suspect. And I just feel like it's really inspiring to kind of meet someone who has been doing it a long time and still loves it and still appreciates the community that it brings and meeting the people who love what you do and doing it for the people that you love. And I'm so grateful to have had you on the podcast today. And this was really, are you there? All right. Well, Peter has frozen. I don't know what's happened. But Peter, if you can hear me, thank you for being on the show today. This was extraordinary.